So I'm back trying to make sure that I keep my vlog up to speed. Um, Reflecting on the past video, there's so much more in my vlog that I need to put, especially in the educational piece coming up from that whole college piece, having the redhead lead me to Delaney, and then Delaney being the exact opposite of Jamie, having this comforting connection coming from the turmoil and hurricane, right? That was a Jamie Whitehead. And then using those particular personal experiences with her to then reanimate where I am located now with street signs, um, with a Christmas gift that she had given me, which was a heater. Um, uh, so yeah, there's a lot going on, and this is the whole piece kind of where I talk about the intelligence community being involved, because this is exactly where their field of expertise is at. This is where their bread and butter is. Um, I a perfect example of this is I was listening to War Stories on one of the YouTube channels, and War Story talked about how young boy went to Vietnam. His dad had worked for the FBI. The dad was extremely aggravated and mad that his son would put off school, right, and a college education to give his life to a war, okay, especially the Vietnam War. And so all this kid knew was um, that he wanted to go and do something bigger than himself. And his dad was extremely mad and was against it, not because of the concern overall, um, but because of what his father knew being part of the FBI. Um, Obviously, there is an element of concern, but come to find out, when the young boy come back from the war, his dad, being affiliated with and working with the FBI, told him he was so mad because he knew that the Americans weren't, or we were not going to win the Vietnam War. So this is one of the main reasons why he had expressed to his son why he was so berated and aggravated, um, that his son would choose to go to the Vietnam War, is because working with the FBI, he knew that we weren't going to win the war. And the fact he put his son had to go out there to risk a sacrifice, right? And so, long story short, the FBI, they had gone through this program of COINTELPRO: disrupt, discredit, destroy, disrupt, discredit, misdirect, disrupt, discredit, neutralize, right? The whole COINTELPRO, sending Martin Luther King this piece of paper, right? You can see what that particular letter was. And I'm living a life that's no different. And the difference here is that they didn't send me a piece of paper. They sent me this coward named Joseph Rose. And so Joseph Rose was a physician assistant student who became affiliated with me primarily from his background of being a paramedic. And they knew that I would affiliate with him because of my background being, coming in from EMS as well, when I was in a physician assistant school. And come October of 2013, they waited till October, obviously it being Halloween, so they sent Joseph Rose to invite me to this bar. And Joseph Rose sat me down at the bar, waited for me to take a few drinks, so my central nervous system was nice and depressed and relaxed. And then Joseph Rose started talking to me in third person. And he started talking about things in great detail, personal things in my life. Um, he told me about things that I was going to do in the future. I'll get into everything. I'm going to put it all kind of together. But he told me that I would be responsible for my Uncle Tony's death, that if I didn't do certain things at a certain time, that I wouldn't be able to save my uncle. Rest in peace. He told me that basically I was going to live some type of life based off of this crowd influence and crowd control that's been simmering in the background of my life since I was a teenager. Um, and this was in 2013 at the time. I believe I was, I don't know, maybe 23, 22, 22, maybe 21. Yeah, 22, maybe 23. I'd have to go back. Long story short, once he told me that, being a kid with ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, and stuff like that, when I was a young kid, there was no straightening out. It was just mostly cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, Pretty much just a lot of yelling and screaming and stuff like that. And, belts and all that other physical bullshit. But the thing about it was, all of a sudden, he started telling me what my life is going to be like. And the only way that they were able to tell me this is through illegal control, unconstitutional surveillance. And that's exactly what I've been going through since that time. I was also reinforced through his third person dialogue, which effectively was hypnotism, essentially. So instead of them sending the piece of paper having no evidence of what they said, they want to come through and just talk to you in this dialogue in third person, right? Just like a hypnotist would talk to somebody in therapy, they would talk to them in a he or a she. They wouldn't say you or I. They would say he or she. And they talk about intimate things in order for your consciousness to latch on to the peculiar and the bizarre nature of the experience, as well as the dialogue and the ease of navigating questions and answers, all pertaining to your personal life, and the ease of him able to articulate that effectively, seeding your subconscious. And long story short, this program has continued since a year after that. This program has continued. And this program that he had told me about, by its timeline, as he induced these thoughts and the things that I would do and the physiologic changes that I would succumb to, have all transpired as he had said, meaning that the environment is effectively navigating around my personal life and taking control of my personal life. Even whenever I go to the law makes sure that they have obstruction of justice and that the things that were told of me become true. Okay, so this is beyond unconstitutional and it's beyond the human right violation. Since the time I have made the last video, I had again tampering with my mail, which is a common deal. I believe I'll have to reference what video this is, but I think 2 or 3 videos I've already explained that I've had while living at this house, multiple counts of mail tampering, mail fraud, stealing of the items out of my package. I just received a 1 terabyte hard drive for external environment, kind of like a tough hard drive. And when they shipped it to me, it was tampered with, and it was missing the black USB Gen 3.2 cord. So I had to send it back, and now I have to take my gas money and drive it back up to Amazon. And this is a common thing. I've ordered carabiners, and they make sure that the components on the carabiners are missing. So technically, I have 1 less carabiner. I've had heels from shoes that I've ordered for my patellar tendon, that the elevated cortisol levels from the stalking and the harassment has elevated to such a degree that I was going through a lot of muscle tears in physician assistant school, especially around rotation time whenever the campaign began, where I was literally, the vehicles will latch onto your geospatial location. They'll wait for you to come outside, and then they'll be driving by, and then every time you go in the door, a vehicle drives by, or every time you open a door, a vehicle drives by. And they're always timing you with vehicles. When I go inside and out of stores and buildings, there are people physically stalking you, physically harassing you. I've addressed that multiple times. That hasn't stopped, and that goes on in Walmart a lot. And so the stress from that elevates your cortisol levels, right? And so the muscles tense. And then when you go to exercise, all of a sudden you find you're tearing fucking muscles all the time. I was tearing hamstrings. I was tearing upper portions of my gastrocnemius. And then eventually I tore my right Achilles tendon because American Medical Response wanted me to work night shifts. And the way this works is they keep you oppressed to a degree in which you're not able to be financially free or make financial decisions. You're kept literally in poverty, poverty levels. And then what they'll do is they smear you, slander you, and then make sure that you're not making enough to go and be independent and away from the abuse, because it's the people that are the abuse. An example of this is the biggest example of this, I believe, is going to be on one of Mark's Outdoors videos. That's way back, where I videotaped what the KGB would call prophylactic dialogue. Prophylactic dialogue is what they used to do. This is back when the gangsters, the mafia, they would use this type of dialogue. If I wanted to threaten you about your family or your kids, I would say something along the lines of, you know, that daycare that your kids are working at, or I'm sorry, that your kids go to. I know that's a really nice place. So if you have any beef with anybody, this type of dialogue would elicit the fact that I know where your kids go. Okay. The difference between that dialogue and the dialogue that's been exhibited in the past 10 years of my life is that instead of them saying it in that fashion, and they have said things like that and sometimes, but a lot of times they'll just flat out come up to me and say he, right? And they'll just say he in third person. But yesterday, from the video of I don't know, I have to check the week date on the last video, but from the last video, I had the mail fraud. I had the white SUVs continue to follow me around. I've been fishing multiple times, and when I went lately to the river, this was like 4 days ago, I believe. I went to the river and I'm doing my thing. I unload. And when I start coming back to the boat ramp, there's 2 boat ramps, and they had parked 1 boat ramp and 2 boat ramp with my parents' vehicle colors. So they had red and white vehicles parked at each boat ramp, 1 white SUV and a red truck. Right. And I took pictures of this. I think I have it on my phone somewhere. Let me see if I can show you. And the deal with this story is the day before, my parents somehow are keeping tabs on my finances. So when I'm making purchases on my credit card, they're sending me money before I even make the purchase, and they're reimbursing me with the similar or almost similar amount of what I've spent. But we have joint accounts and I have a private account. So I called Navy Federal up and I wasted 3.5 hours of my life going back and forth with Navy Federal Credit Union to determine whether or not it's true or false if a joint owner which we're sharing a joint checking account, if those people who are on that account are allowed to see my private personal credit card account? The answer is no. And so I questioned them about breach of privacy, breach of user agreement and contract. And they started delaying my book. And I have all this on video too. I recorded it. And they started delaying my phone call, trying to make me hang up. Here is, let's see if I can zoom in. This is me, and they used the red truck that I used to drive a little red truck, but my father drives a red truck. And this is me parked at coming back in the evening time after I caught fish. And that's the thing, is they'll wait for me to be enjoying myself, right? They'll wait for me to be enjoying myself. And then when I come back to the ramp, they're waiting for me. There was nobody here at this ramp. When I come back to the ramp, now all of a sudden, they have the white SUV with the red truck, reminding me of my parents. This is the day after I spent the whole evening from like 3 to about 7, I believe, going back and forth with Navy Federal, finding out that my parents, Nicholas Wayne Hill and Rosemary Hill of North Carolina, are somehow using surveillance to pay attention to my finances. And this is a form of domestic abuse, which has been going on for years. And they think that they're going to work with my employers who are firing me and terminating me off of no ethical or moral basis, of appropriate basis. And then what they do is they'll have my parents keep me under their financial thumb and send me money like I need it, like I'm inadequate and I'm inept and I have no validity to any of my claims. Then I deal with the police officers at every level, from the local police officers, from the ALEA, from even when I put in my cyber stalking claims with the feds, I didn't even receive a receipt that it was put in. I never even received a receipt. Okay, multiple times I've written them narratives and I didn't even get a receipt saying that they received it. I have a ticket from a police officer in Fayetteville, I think it was the sheriff's, who wrote me a ticket, wrote me a fucking ticket for reporting that I'm being harassed, and told me that it is a misuse of resources. And the thing is, the prolonged nature and the gravity of the harassment and the stalking is far beyond bodily injury. It's a felony. This is a felony at this point from anybody and everybody involved, right? So the next thing, after these pictures were taken and I'd get about my house, there's white SUVs following me again, right? After I've got this understanding now that somehow there is communication going on, which I knew there was communication. I knew that there was surveillance. But the fact of the matter is that Navy Federal is telling me, and I have clear, without irrefutable denial, I guess, if you will, that my accounts are being monitored and observed, right? And I'm supposed to have privacy of my own bank account, right? Okay. So what they'll do is, and this is the same, regional paramedics, Shoals ambulance, making sure that I'm financially destitute. And then what my parents will do is they'll come in and then give me some money just to get me to scrape along. And I've been noticing that this is a pattern as I'm going in between jobs. So in between jobs, this is when they start to send this shit. And this is domestic violence, and this is called economic abuse. This is narcissism, neuroticism. Same family that was food poisoning me every 2 years since around the age of 12. Every 2 years, I couldn't figure it out until I was about 17 or 18. I said I couldn't figure it out. Every time I'd go and eat with the fucking family, I'd always be the only one who's fucking puking my guts out in the middle of the night. I'd be the only one until I was hospitalized at one point here in Illinois in the ER. And my grandmother, it happened 2 or 3 times there, and it was always happening at least twice, like every 2 years with my family, living with my mother. And long story short, every time it was me as the only one that was always fucking food poisoned. Every single time. Right? So the story starts coming together, and I've got Varsity Tutors who I have a list of students, which I talked very briefly about at the last video, who has incorrectly graded the activity for them so that I'm being underpaid a bunch of money, like around, I think all of them collectively, I would say maybe $80 to $90 or something like that. So I'm getting attacked through every avenue in the occupational setting. I've been doing some shadowing at one of the level 1 hospitals with a supervisor who's already gaslighting me. I've only been there twice to shadow and observe, and she's already gaslighting me about what I can and can't do. She's writing to me an email with the color blue, these blue letters, right? So she's already abusing me. And what they'll do is they'll take every ethnicity of woman and they'll use that ethnicity and keep that ethnicity around in my social media. They'll keep it around like on Facebook, or they'll keep it around on YouTube. And then what they'll do is they'll have only those women of that particular ethnicity be in my social space everywhere I go, or be in my supervisor, or be my coworker, or be someone who I'm acquainted with. And then they'll abuse you with that person. They'll abuse you with that ethnic person. Okay. So all of these patterns slowly start to develop. And that was going on. All of these things that I'm talking about regarding the mail, regarding the Navy Federal Credit Union, regarding the pictures with the white SUVs that continue and the red trucks to remind me of my family, the Varsity Tutors piece, I'm going back and forth with them. Matter of fact, I just resigned from them because I got fed up with it. And then yesterday, and then the red cars still follow me around every day. Every single day, I'm harassed by these red vehicles. That's been going on for a decade. Everywhere I go, there's red vehicles harassing me somewhere, either parked around me, or people, in this case, they'll wear red shirts, and then they'll have me walk by them. All of this harassment. But the thing is, and that happened today when I went grocery shopping at the local Walmart. But yesterday, and going back to the whole KGB and prophylactic conversation, what they like to do is instead of them talking like that, and they will talk like that, but what they'll also say is things that they know you're gonna run into, or things that know they're gonna happen. For example, I was walking earlier in the spring, and because I'm so attuned to the nature of the dialogues, merely by the fact that I've been traumatized. When I said I'm being stalked, when I said I'm being harassed, the police make sure to not do anything and obstruct justice in the color of law. So you're forced to go through the trauma, right? So if I had been less civilized and I just brutally beat somebody until I was placed in jail, which is exactly what they want from you, right? They want to incriminate you and they want you to be criminalized. And I just didn't deal with it, then I would be on a different spectrum, living a different life. But what happens is, because you're obedient and you're civil, you're forced to go through the trauma. And then what happens is now you're essentially anchored in, right? You're always anchored into the conversations. And so all they have to do now is just have a conversation about something nonchalantly, and I call it third person conversation. And that third person conversation is always something either with fear mongering, okay, regarding something in the occupational setting, fear mongering with some type of violence or the attitude or some type of conflict or confrontation regarding where you're going to be. For example, prime example of this would be uh, fear mongering. When I was taking care of a gentleman, I believe in the last video I told you someone that I went to, their daughter looked like Tiffany Stone. And at the end of that shift, they told me that there was a sheriff outside and that there was a bunch of dogs running around. This fear mongering tactic has been laced in my life for years. Even when we're talking about clinicals, for example, they love to fear monger about clinicals and personalities in clinicals and talk about surgeons and how they're yelling and screaming, and they love to fear monger. That was going on in physician assistant school, nonstop fear mongering, trying to get you to anticipate and be on eggshells and be all fucking worked up about the experience. Fear mongering is one of their tools. Okay. Unless you see it happen, unless you physically see it happen or hear it happen, fear mongering is one of their tools. The other tools that they like to use is they like to use this, what I call, again, this prophylactic dialogue. But most of the time, again, going back to this spring, I was walking around, I believe one of the Walmarts or either the gym or coming out in the parking lot. And what they like to do is they like to walk by and just say one sentence. And you'll notice that their decibels are just always higher. If they want you to hear it, they'll talk louder than normal, just so you can hear it. And again, one of these things that I'm talking about, one of the examples is in Mark's Outdoors when I go to get my rods. You'll hear that prophylactic dialogue. And they're talking about the activity that you're actually doing, right? Or you're getting ready to do. Many times when I go to the law office and I start filing things, many times I'll go to the gym and you'll hear a girl say it's going to be dismissed. Or I'll walk out the court and go down to maybe another store or something, and they'll say, oh, it's going to be dismissed. They'll just say it. They'll just say it's going to be dismissed. And when I was walking around this spring, I heard this girl go, you're not going to have a Christmas. And so what they do is they just start going, and literally in volumes, there's thousands of people involved, hundreds of thousands. Every time I leave, I have thousands of people involved in literally tracking where I go, everywhere I go in their vehicles. And they'll start driving these red vehicles everywhere I go, intercepting me everywhere I go. And so what I don't understand is I have a justice system who is obstructing justice in the color of law. I still haven't had any reply regarding my submission of my claims. It's literally going on 10 months. I filed January 29th. I have another one I'm going to file by sometime in December. And I haven't heard anything. And when I did hear back, it was trying to deny something that I highlighted there for them and I put there for them, and yet they didn't bother to read it. This was a judge or a magistrate, I believe, right? So even they are acting oblivious to the nature of the concern and the unconstitutional problems that continue. And so what happens now is I just live this life essentially where I have to go to the magistrate, tell them that I have XYZ going on, and that there's dozens of accounts of harassment or dozens of accounts of vandalism, dozens of accounts of stalking, dozens of accounts of domestic abuse, right? Dozens of accounts there's accounts of bodily injury, all of these things. And then you have a justice system that doesn't want to work or do anything or acknowledge it. So it's like, as a private citizen, I just found I have no option, but to just defend myself. But the problem is that there's thousands of people involved, and what I don't get is that they all act oblivious and and ignorant. If you try to address things with somebody, they'll just say, "Well, what are you talking about?" And it's the level of narcissism is so high and so astronomical that you just don't even understand how the hell you would not be able to see rationally what the hell is going on. And so yesterday, um, the grotesque nature of this is they'll use their kids, right? So I went kayak fishing yesterday, and we're talking prophylactic dialogue. I don't call it prophylactic. I call it third person conversation. I call it indirect. I call it directed conversation. That's just what I call it. There's a bunch of terms for it, right? It's just like crazy people all over the world were saying UFOs are real, and then they would put them like in the psych ward and right all that other stuff. Put them on meds and do all this other stuff. But look, here we are, right? Oh yeah, UFOs are real. So it's like other people too that are going through the same thing that I'm probably going through, but they're over there digging deep into, probably from my research, probably going into things like the whole voice to skull, reading it into MK Ultra, reading into Project Prism, reading into IR radio microwaves and all this stuff, right? There's even people out there putting like tinfoil hats on, right? So that's the level of investigation that other people out there are doing. But I don't even like stress about that, because it's a simple fact that it has accuracy and precision, and that's enough to show, as long as there's accurate precision, that there's some type of technology, right? I'm not going to get worked up and buy a bunch of devices to try to diffuse or deflect anything that's out there. I'm just going to let it be and just acknowledge that there's accuracy and precision. So that's that. It's obviously technology. But the thing about it is this conversation is this guy and his kid. This kid must have been, oh, I don't know, probably 2. And I'm driving. Before this, I was heading to this park kayak fishing. I was going down this road kind of in this neighborhood, and the white SUVs were following me and intercepting me. And I was going down this one neighborhood, and all of a sudden, a fucking black or a red truck pulled up behind me. This older guy and this female, maybe in their 50s, pulls up behind me and starts driving behind me. And I don't tolerate red vehicles follow me everywhere. What they'll do is they'll instigate and provoke you, and then after that incident, wherever it may be, they'll have vehicles follow you. This has happened outside of school too. They'll do the same thing at college, and they'll pull up behind you. I've stopped in the middle of the roadway, tell them to get along, get along and go somewhere about your business. And what they'll do is, the crazy thing is, they'll act like they're not doing anything. That's the craziest part of it. That's the most insane part. Right? Because one red vehicle, that's 1 in 9 or 1 in 10. I believe the manufacturers say that on the road there's 1 red vehicle per 9 vehicles. So it's like one out of 10 essentially. So for every 10 vehicles, there should be 1 red vehicle. So when they're driving in convoys around you, it's obviously irrational, and it's under their control. So long story short, this has been going on every day. I go somewhere, there's always an issue. And for some reason, they're erasing the material from my computer, right? I have years of notes. I used to put memo notes in my phone, and they went through and erased pages of memo notes and pages, especially when it first started out in 2014. I'd go home, and they're deliberately going through my phone. My phone is literally lit up. It's hot, like it come out of the oven, because they're just all over the phone, inside it, in the text messages. And you can see that they're selecting the text messages, going up and down, pushing buttons all by themselves, right? And then erasing that information. Going through my 4K, which I've shown you, my R2 4K, which is my dash cam. Okay, I've shown you that in previous videos. Long story short, red truck pulls up. I'm in this neighborhood. He's pulling up behind me and he's following me. I stop the vehicle in the middle of the road in this neighborhood. I get out partially. He drives around to my left side and then he stops and he acts like he needs to engage in a conversation as if he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And then I told him what I had to tell him to go about their business, asking if he had a problem. And then they shake their head and they just go off as if for 10 fucking years they don't know anything, but there's hundreds of thousands of people involved in this bullshit. And I have to explain something to him like he's a village idiot, like no one told him or something, right? So anyways, I get going down the neighborhood and I get to my spot, figure out what I have to do, and I start fishing. I go up one way, go down the other way. It's kind of a faster little river, so it's kind of moving a little bit. So I go upstream. When I'm coming back, guy in a red boat again. So I'm harassed with a red truck, and then him and his son are in this red canoe coming up as I come back. I go all the way down, stop, decide to get waders, and decide I was going to go explore downstream. Went downstream, did what I had to do, caught a really nice fish, several nice fish, come back up, and Knucklehead decides he's going to time when I get back. So I'm coming up, getting ready to beach, and he's coming up with his little 2-year-old son or whatever, a 3-year-old son maybe, I guess. 3.5, I'd say, maybe even 4, I would say, because he's walking. So I'd say he's probably 4. He's just so small, I wasn't even trying to pay attention because I was so aggravated about the situation. So as I'm pulling up, he's pulling up, okay, in this red canoe. So first they literally were following me in the red truck as I'm getting there. New place, enjoying an experience of fishing, enjoying an experience of the outdoors, right? It's supposed to be positive mental health. I'm harassed on the way in. I'm harassed while I'm fishing. Okay, keeping this color coordination always there. Okay, in Alabama, harassment is right a misdemeanor. But the problem is you have to tell people this, and I shouldn't have to tell people something that's so rationally obvious. If you don't recognize that there's thousands of people involved, you don't recognize that all of these people are all doing the same dumb things, then why the hell do you even have a medical license, or why the hell do you swing a javelin if you don't fucking see that? So the thing about it, why the hell do you have a pistol and a badge? You call yourself a police officer or a state trooper if you can't see something so blatantly fucking obvious? Long story short, I'm getting ready to pick up my belongings and start toting it kind of up this steep embankment with stairs through the woods into my car. It's a good little walk. So I grab half my belongings, I go do that, come back, and I'm going to grab my kayak. As I'm going to grab it, the guy goes, "Hey, you need any help?" And this is what's so crazy about this dialogue. When I showed you that picture 3 days prior, where they were parking the white SUV red truck at another location, at another area, when I was coming back, they waited for me, and then they parked it in 2 separate boat ramps, okay, to replicate. Like I said, I call it in other videos, reanimate. I call it animating. They're animating the stigma and they're animating abuse, right? And the triggers from my personal information by using these vehicles that remind me of my parents, right? They're reanimating. This was 3 days prior. So 3 days prior, well, I remember when I got back to that boat ramp, the guy did the same thing. He had all these rods out, and they'll abuse you with visual stimulus, and then they'll have some type of sympathy or altruism associated with it, right? So they'll abuse you, and then they'll use altruism or some type of sympathy dialogue. Hey, you need help, while they're abusing you, and this is what triggers you, because it's the level of narcissistic neuroticism that you just want to flip a switch, right? And you just see it and you're inundated with this over years. This is years of elevated cortisol, right? Shrinking of your hippocampus, shrinking of your cortex, diagnosed with hyperlipidemia. You can't figure out why because you're doing all the right things you're supposed to do, but you still have hyperlipidemia. Well, you know why? Because you're undergoing all this stress. So you're building atherosclerosis, right? You're aging, right? All this oxidative stress, right? Over years. This isn't someone who just been induced in it for a fucking month. I've seen on YouTube how women and other people experience trauma and stress for a month. This is every day, every week, every month, every year, for years. Okay? For years. And you can't escape it because every time you go and drive somewhere, you're inundated with this intercepting road rage. You're intercepted by these red vehicles. And it's not a colored vehicle, it's an interception of frequency. So they'll make sure if it's not a colored vehicle, that's a force of stimulus, then it's going to be a frequency deal, right? Where they'll come in and they'll drive past you every 15 seconds in a certain fashion, or they'll make sure that on every turn, there's a car that meets you at the intersection. Every single time you come to the intersection, they will time to be there exactly 4 seconds before you get to that intersection. Or if you are 50 feet away from that intersection or that stop sign, okay, they'll make sure that the vehicle pulls up exactly as you are meeting 50 feet from the stop sign. That's what every vehicle will do for the entire duration of your transit, from the place you're going and then all the way back. It doesn't have to be a specific color of vehicle. It could just be the frequency. Okay. So again, that's what kind of elevated the whole experience. Is not only are they using the stimulus of your parents' vehicles, but they're using the stimulus of this this sympathy or this altruistic expression or dialogue associated with the abuse, right? So stop harassing you and then using some type of sympathy. The thing about it is if I arrest these people, they're going to act and fight as if they're doing nothing fucking wrong. And that is what's so infinitesimally corrupt about this, is that you go and talk to them and it's the crazy making campaign at such an astronomical level. It's like trying to look at the next galaxy. You just can't believe it, right? It's so insane. People literally belong in a mental institution. Okay. So, and they need to be arrested. It's going to come down to that. So back to the story. Red truck, red canoe and kid, 4 years old. I dumped off half my load on my vehicle, come back to the kayak, lift the kayak up, right? 70 pounds, 12 foot long, got it on my back, got it on my head. I've got to go up this steep embankment with these like old stone steps. And the guy sees me lift this thing up. I ignored his question because I knew he was trying to antagonize me. That's part of the provocation, is that they're abusing you with visual stimuli, and then they're trying to be sympathetic and altruistic on the other half. And it just is a perfect little ball of animosity. So I ignored him, walked, grabbed it, and there's a little tiny difference in some of the steps. So you could trip and fall and just really just annihilate a tibia, probably a kneecap too. But the edges are sharp too. So, I mean, it is sketchy. Long story short, I'm coming toward, I turn like this. The guy's and his son's like 15 feet away. He sees that I picked it up and that I'm heading there. And then he lets his son run up to the stair, the first step, which is like at this point, maybe 20 feet away. And then he starts walking towards him. And instead of pulling the son away, the son kind of just like looks at me and everything. And as I'm walking up, I start hitting some of those larger gapped stairs. And the guy starts carrying this conversation. He's talking to his son, but he's talking to his son exactly when I'm making strides up and around these altered steps, and timing his dialogue as I'm making these steps. Okay, up, irregular steps, and then up. But he's timing the dialogue, talking to his son. As I get up to, and what he makes it feel as if he's walking behind me, and they do this a lot. What they'll do is, if you need something at the store, I've talked to you about this in the 3 videos before. I was in Walmart, and I needed, what was it? Was it olive oil? I think it was olive oil. Or what was? No, it was detergent. It was detergent. So what they'll do is, they know that I'm low on a specific item. They already have surveillance at the house, and they know what's going on at all times, and they keep tabs on what you use. Okay. I was low on detergent, and there's been multiple times this has happened in the past. They'll keep tabs on the things that you're low on. As you're walking through that aisle, what they'll do is, they'll have somebody collide with you. And if you don't have it written down, you'll deviate off that aisle. And in this case, I was walking kind of briskly, and all of a sudden, this guy was walking super fast, almost like a jog. And he ran right into this, like to my left diagonal shoulder, as I was slowly kind of slowing down to look down the aisle. And because he was going so fast, I kind of just kept going. And what they'll do is, they'll cause you to deviate and make you forget things in that fashion. So they'll use proxemics. Again, it goes to proxemics in order to facilitate error. They'll do this in the medical field. They'll do this while you're at work. They'll do this while you're handling things in critical care. Talking about Anthony White, for example, when I want to put the infusion pump down at the lower setting while we're moving the patient and loading the patient so it doesn't fall, he decides he's gonna, because he's the FTO supervisor, he's gonna put it up high. And sure enough, when we load the patient on the stretcher bracket, because of the weight of everything vibrating, it fell, and then we have an air embolism during a hematologic transfusion. Right? So it's always, so basically, I'm always put in bad company. I can never go anywhere, and it's always somebody somewhere facilitating some type of error, always doing something counter my gradient. Always. Friends, family, co-workers, justice system. I'm going up the steps. Finally get up, put the kayak down on the rack. I got to kind of lift it up. But this guy, he makes sure that he's within proximity and that his son is in with proximity. So his purpose is to irritate me. I've been irritated 3 times now, right? I've been harassed by law, entering through the neighborhood, getting there and having him use the same colors, canoe, going one way and back, up the stairs. I load the kayak. He makes sure that he's within proximity of me while I'm loading it. So they follow me up, has his son follow close behind me. And then he waits for his son to get over by the vehicle. And this is where that whole, what they would call prophylactic dialogue, I just call it attacking harassment dialogue, third person. In this case, it's just direct conversation, but it's third person because he's talking to his son. They love this. They'll wait for you at doors. They'll wait for you in hallways, and they'll have conversations knowing you're going to come through right by it. They'll elevate the decibels in the conversation, and it has something pertaining to fear mongering, something that's about to happen in your future, or something antagonizing that happened to you recently. They want to poke and mock and joke and abuse and harass you. So they'll talk about it to keep you triggered and antagonized. He's talking to his son, and every single time I go to lift my arms up, The guy goes, all right, lift your arms up. Lift your arms up. So I'm going to lift my arms up to secure it. And part of this is I've done this in the past where I'm so aggravated and I'm so stressed out over it because of this type of directed dialogue. I know on 2 occasions I've actually left without securing the kayak, and the kayak fell off in the parking lot because I'm so aggravated and pissed off that I'm being literally stalked and harassed by thousands of people, groups of people. And it happens down there near the boat ramp where this dialogue comes through. And what they'll do is they'll just time these interactions with what you're physically doing. And my one professors, and multiple professors, I should say, does this whenever you're writing about a certain subject or taking notes. They'll keep tabs on where you're at, and they'll have like little conversations about particular words or topics, and then they'll start talking about it, and they'll just keep tabs on the things you're doing in real time, and then have dialogue conversations about it. Right. So the guy continues. He's like, all right, put your hands. So go ahead and put your hands up. And of course, I had to put my hands up so I can secure, right, the tether on the kayak and make sure that I got 2 tethers and I'm wrapped around. So he goes and he does this like 3 or 4 times. I'm in there doing something, and he's like, all right, hang it. Go ahead and hang it up. And so I've got to take my PFD and I put it inside like I'm hanging it up. And he's talking to his son the whole time. And all he's doing is coordinating with synchrony what he's doing with what I'm doing. Directed conversation. They'll use this a lot to trigger people and make people snap. You just don't even realize it's happening, and they're practicing. And by the way, I've been told that I'm going to be practiced on. And I'm fixing to start practicing on people. So I've been told, Joseph Rose told me that I'd be practiced on, and that they target men in my family. And then at the end of all this stuff, and we're going to get into that whole piece, at the end of this whole thing, he then tells me that he never said it. And then he smacks me in the back of the head and pushes me. Right. All right. So that's the dealio. I've got about 5 or so events that happened since last event. Mail tampering. I still have to waste my time, waste more of my life, and drive up to return a UPS item. I resigned from Varsity Tutors because they want to keep me around bad company. Bad company on both behalves, student and Varsity Tutors themselves. So we just keep working through this oppression. What they do is they'll just make sure that I'm oppressed financially at all times, so that I'm forced to make the occupational decision to move to the next job. And the problem is they want you to always go up this learning gradient. So as you're going forward in a learning gradient, typically any learning gradient means that you're going to lose some of the competency on the back end, right? So as you try to go to the next place, right? And it's not even about that anymore. I've got to have people answering to me in the courtroom. This is no longer about whether or not I'm an expert in my field. I know I'm an expert in my field. And that's actually on my videos. I think I put 2 videos, one on shoals and one on regional. I have stories on top of stories on top of stories. I can talk literally probably for a solid 7 days straight until I needed a nice bowl of food. I could probably talk 3 days straight until I died of thirst on the things that have went down in my life in the past 35 years, but specifically since 2014. Going bald from now on. I don't mean like I'm going bald. You can see I have a hairline still, but this is going to be the look moving forward. I'm just fed up with the haircuts, so this is going to be the way from now on. That's pretty much it. I've got a big exam coming up, and then we're going to work to get our CCC back. critical care paramedic certified. And the thing is, there's employers trying to get me to like drive all around the United States. And then all of a sudden, once I purchased a house, all of this travel and making money just stopped. All of a sudden, they don't want to give me, all of a sudden, I can't get a job. I have all my certs, I have everything. And all of a sudden, they don't want to give me a job that's making good money. It's always about keeping me in poverty because I'm trying to, you know, have some financial independence. I enjoy doing the whole tenant real estate thing, and they want to make sure I don't do that. They literally collectively want to make sure that I live a life opposite to what I desire. That's what this is about. This is about keeping me isolated, keeping me a bachelor, making sure I don't have kids, making sure I don't have any significant other, making sure I don't have money, making sure I don't have a job, making sure I don't have what I want in life, making sure I'm in mental anguish, making sure that I'm literally handicapped because I have a debilitating injury that, matter of fact, on that, I want to talk about that really quick. The whole Achilles tendon piece. So the reason why the Achilles tendon never healed is because at the time I was in Norfolk, Virginia, and I want to make sure this is documented. I was living with somebody named Cody Price. Cody Price looked like a younger, like almost like a younger version of my grandfather. And when I moved out, he had married a female that almost looked like my grandmother. And so they're trying to reanimate that, okay, reanimate the whole relationship with my grandparents. So while I was there, I tore my Achilles tendon working at American Medical Response. And then I was abused by American Medical Response afterwards, and they continued to send me to ortho after I had torn my Achilles tendon. They decided that they were going to make me frequent orthopedics and go to IFT orthopedics. The whole time I was there running as a medic, they were tampering with my tough book, erasing my EPCR narratives, going through my phone and erasing the telecommunications in my memos. They were going through and cutting my data off whenever I was calling in for pre-hospital communications to confirm with the ER that I was arriving. And they were doing a huge campaign on all of my telecommunications. And then they were, on top of that, they were making sure that I was working a night shift all the time. So they were making sure that my stress levels were always escalated. And this is what came to be a tear, essentially, of my right Achilles. And the reason why it never healed right was because, number one, they didn't secure the sutures correctly. And number two, at the time, I was upstairs in this room share at Cody Price's house in Norfolk. And I come down one day, and this was like a week or so after surgery. And as I was coming down on the crutches, the last couple steps, I had just kind of stumbled a little bit forward. And when I put the foot down, obviously it dorsiflexed. When it dorsiflexed, I heard a little pop, and that was one of the stitches coming undone off of the medial aspect of the tendon, the calcaneal tendon. And I felt this pain, right? Almost like I had pulled the tendon again, or a portion of it. Come to find out, doc said, well, all the pieces of it were all stretched and everything, is what he told me. He said the other option is to just replace the whole tendon, do a tendon transplant. So my tendon has never healed right. And it was because I was forced to live in that living situation to begin with. I should have never had to have gone through any of the things in the last 10 years. I should have just been able to finish school. But because this campaign was initiated in school and there was all this illegal activity going on, I've had to move around everywhere, to include purchasing this house, knowing that I was fed up living in apartments where I was subjected to all kinds of noise pollution and abuse. Further, when I did my trucking, and before that, when I had times that I was staying in my vehicle, that I had to get away from the abuse. That I would obviously acknowledge the opportunity and I would take the house. And I told you that they had cloaked the deed and the owner's name until the day that I had come to sign with the real estate lawyer Palmer at the round table with the real estate agent, where they showed me that the real owner's name was Nina, and that was the last female that I had a relationship with, and that I had some experience with that whole prophylactic conversation with, and I just don't trust any women. And the thing is I'm gonna do a chapter on my childhood. There's something very peculiar and something that happened multiple times that I think is very important to share and document. And it always changed my perspective on the other half of um, relationships, which is women in general. And I want to get into that whole piece, specifically always being told to go meet somebody, or always being told to go talk to somebody, always being told, right, to be attracted or to go and acknowledge somebody's interest. And it was never on my accord. Um, I'm going to get into that piece. Um, the whole dating app thing has stopped, um, but it hasn't, for some reason, stopped. I guess with the ethnicity abuse, a lot of the ethnicity abuse in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 months has been a lot of like Latino women. For some reason, based off of one of my recent videos, all of a sudden now I had 2 students that were Latinas, and I had this Latina that was in my school, and all of this stuff. Like the things that I talk about, they make sure that they animate this, right? Um, but again, it's like the grotesque nature of them using their children, or they'll use geriatric people to do the abuse. They'll use older people to do the abuse. They'll always have somebody in a stroller to abuse you, and they'll use this like as a crutch, right, for you not to snap, or for you not to arrest them, or for you not to confront them. And it's always this little. It just shows how narcissistic it is. It just shows like how corrupt and demented the whole thing is. So that's the vlog for today. The other thing is I still haven't heard back from the Amazon investigator. I've spoken to Amazon multiple times. The investigator still hasn't gotten back to me. The whole FCC and Straight Talk thing, they have finally afforded a phone call with me and taking some due diligence and giving me a ticket number with verbal confirmation that they're going to be sending me what I asked, which is the only thing that's really come to light appropriately. What else? No more tenants. No one is coming in this house for the rest of the year. What else? There's just all kinds of stuff, right? Instead of being focused on doing great things, you're focused on beating people in law, and pretty soon it's going to be come down to arresting people and then figuring out how to navigate that process. I just had this suspicion that it's going to go down, and it's just not if, it's when. It's just like when and how many, basically, right? So that's that. I don't have anything really left to say. So till next time, I suppose.